have much to celebrate this weekend as a parish community. As Father said, we are celebrating the feast of our patron, St. Jude. The diocese has also asked me to say a word on vocations, as this is National Priesthood Sunday, and as we prepare for National Vocation Awareness Week, which starts next Sunday. But most importantly, we have one of the most famous stories in the Gospel of short little Zacchaeus and his pathway to know and become one with Christ the living God. In all those things, St. Jude, vocations, Zacchaeus, there's one message that I think ties them all together. And the idea is, whenever there is a heartfelt, grace-filled, and fruitful yes in our lives, there is a painful no. I'll say that again. Whenever there is a grace-filled, heartfelt, fruitful yes in our lives, there is also a painful no. For Zacchaeus, the first part of his life, when he said yes to being a chief tax collector, yes for being a Jewish citizen that worked for the Romans, no Jew liked that, because of course he was collecting taxes from his fellow people. And even the Romans probably didn't like him being that he was Jewish. But by saying yes to being a chief tax collector and having more wealth than the common person, he said no to having a life full of relationships or friendships. He thought in those moments that money, wealth, would make him happy. That was his yes. But what a lonely man he must have been without the company of friends. There was his no. The same thing can be said in the life of all of us, no matter what vocation we share. For you that are out there that are married, you know what it was like, and you can recall, as I say, think back to the moment where you stood in front of your spouse and promised to care for them and love them and be with them until the end of your life. In that moment, a heartfelt, grace-filled, loving, fruitful yes also came with a no of sorts. The end to the bachelor or bachelorette life. A yes to a new mission, to work to get your spouse to heaven, and vice versa. For us studying for the priesthood, or those who are already priests or religious, it was a zealful, grace-filled yes to answer the Lord's call. But in that moment, there was also a hurtful no. Knowing that we were not called to have children, or have a spouse, or have our own family, but to be pastors and shepherds for the greater family, the family of God. Some people may be celebrating their vocation in the single life. Here we go again. A yes to living out your life the best you can with Christ at the center of it, saying no to the intimate relationships, but always having the intimate relationship with Christ. And that's where Zacchaeus found light and hope. That day when he climbed that tree and bent over and looked down, Jesus looked up at him, and his life changed. In that moment, Zacchaeus' yes went from wealth and money and a big house to, yes, Lord, I want to follow you. Yes, Lord, I want to love you. I'm going to give half of what I have to the poor, and anybody that I've wronged, I'm going to pay them back 4 times over. But there was a no there too, because he was giving all that wealth up, monetary wealth, that is. The same thing can be said for our patron, St. Jude. Now, we don't know much about St. Jude, Simon or Jude, of their early life or their life of ministry. What we do know is that they said yes to the invitation of God to follow Jesus Christ. They said yes to love Christ and to share his message of the new church, of the Gospels. And a painful no they must have had in the things in their life that they lacked, even so much as to give up their lives for the church. We have a lot to celebrate today. We have a lot to be grateful for. But in the end, we have to ask ourselves, what are our fruitful, grace-filled, and heartfelt yeses in our lives? Rejoice with them. Be thankful for them. But also be aware of the painful no's that we have encountered. There is not a painful no that we cannot overcome with the help of God. There is grace there. And just think what it would be like, for just a moment, put yourself in this gospel story. Think what it would be like to be Zacchaeus, to climb that tree, to look over and see Jesus, and to watch as Jesus looked up at you and said, "Come down from there, for today I must stay at your house." What a joyful yes that would be. And when we run into the open arms of our Lord, what a grace-filled moment it will be to hear Christ, the living God, look at us and say, "Today, salvation has come to your house."